This will be an entire documentary dedicated to my wonderful vivarium. Maybe the internet's most biodiverse contained jungle yet created, with multiple ant colonies, and I'm not kidding about this, but also termites, spiders, reptiles, amphibians, and even a crab, a freshwater crab, including so much more that has been prospering side by side inside for now 2 years. That's a long time. And in this video I will not only introduce you to this project, but also provide you with an awesome chronological descent into the life and peculiarities that this vivarium has shown us during these 2 amazing years. I have been wanting to do this for a very long time, because this will really allow us to get a deeper understanding about how this project went as a whole, and also who would say no to an X-minute long video about these natural wonders. But also, without further ado, this is Nordic Ants, and I present to you a full documentary about one of the most amazing vivariums on the entire internet. Let's begin with, as usual again, a musical intro, and this one will be a bit longer than the usual ones. So, I have hundreds of gigabytes to play with for this video, which means that I can't present all the species or happenings that you may have seen in previous videos. And I am so sorry for that, but in the worst case scenario, you could comment something and I might make a hidden video for you guys to watch later on. But yeah, let's begin now, in a vivarium far back in time. The tank itself that I bought was originally a koi fish tank, since it could sustain 1.4 cubic meters of water in it. I was certain that I could, without any problem, fill it with whatever I wanted. The glass was so thick. And inside, I filled the vivarium with gravel that would act as a false bottom that I then simply put a substrate divider on. I made some special designs for a lake as well, or a pond maybe, by making one part more shallow than the other parts. And if you're more interested about it, check out the video above. But continuing, the next step required an ingredient that was vital for this vivarium, and not in a small amount either. A lot of dirt. Yeah, I had a lot of intervals to do there. Oh man, but after some time I managed to get a decent amount of dirt inside, and after the preliminary layer was put, I was able to place the first fundamental structures of the vivarium, such as this bonsai rock. Later, I added other substrates, such as sand, not only because of the aesthetics, but also because, as you guys should know by now, that I value diversity as one of the essential goals for a successful vivarium, and self-evidently, will a diverse physical environment prosper a more diverse ecosystem, broadly speaking. But as the first bricklayer of this beautiful house was placed, I could later place the first organisms inside, and I did not have an infinitum of plants and decorations, but I thought about this as the vivarium's first temporary kind of grotesque design that for sure could sustain the pioneering inhabitants of these bare lands that would later become something extraordinary. The first one introduced was this female beetle that flew into our balcony. Clumsy and indiscreet as she was, I suspect that she against all odds managed to actually breed in the vivarium. As you can see, I found a huge scrub by the glass, just centimeters away from the place she dug her hole. I never saw the metamorphosed adult beetle that could have easily flown out, but I sure as hell have seen many beetle cocoons inside the vivarium. So we might have allowed for the Bangkok beetle population to sustain itself. And this mom soon after flew out from the vivarium. An important notice is that I almost always have the vivarium open, with sometimes even a lamp over it to attract flying bugs inside. The only barrier is for the non-flying organisms that I stop by simply applying olive oil on the tank's extremities. Next inhabitant is this supple skink that eats a lot of small critters, even ant eggs and termites, which is perfect for this vivarium in order to control the population of all the ant colonies and the termite one that will soon be introduced. It is still well and alive today, and I have had the privilege to see the subterranean beast only 4 times during the 2 years it has been inhabiting the tank, but it was so worth it. I kept introducing animals that I found flying into our balcony, hoping for them to stay or breed, but yeah, some are just ungrateful. Bah. But it paid off, and soon larvae of all sorts started popping up here and there. Some of them really strange looking, like this one. And not only this, but they fed the predatory population of the tank. This was awesome. I could just imagine how things will go when all the preparations are done. But the next step was a huge one. The introduction of the termite mound. Oh my god, I had never seen anyone do this online ever, and I just used the ant experience on hand as well as some online help, especially from my well-educated and awesome subscribers. If you want to see more about the installation, check this annotation above. But I mostly used cardboard and a mixture of cocoa fibers and dirt, as well as some architectural skills of mine. Psych. It was a mess to start with, but the industrious termites soon repaired the damage, and as most of my subscribers know, made this vivarium their prospering home. These guys are from the Globitermes genus, and I call them kamikaze termites because of their defensive nature of the soldiers. Let's check it out. I was lucky enough to observe a clash of species in nature. One weaver ant colony versus these buggers. And you can see how the soldiers, when caught, release some yellow liquid on the ants that neutralizes them instantaneously. This is called autophysis, and it allows one small termite like this one to take down up to 3 or more bigger ants. Amazing strategy, isn't it? Although it's quite suicidal, but who cares? It's nature. Knowing this, and knowing that the land in the vivarium was still barren, I did not want the termites to be entirely uncontested for the nesting space. Henceforth, I introduced a small colony of fierce mini trapjaw ants. They would easily hunt them daily, and the time-lapse that showcases their move inside really reassured me that my decision to introduce them was necessary. After the introduction, I was not able to see them so often since they were so small. I saw some of their underground tunnels once or twice, or 2 workers tandem running to wherever they needed to be. I often placed offerings to try to find out what animals that could have hitchhiked along one of the plants. As predicted, some small ant colonies had managed to infiltrate themselves. But since this tank was so enormous, I did not worry about it. They were going to be preyed upon by hundreds of spiders and other predators that quickly kills off whoever dares to try and dominate the tank. That's when I saw one of the first ants to one of this vivarium's most successful colonies, the big-headed ants. The red big-headed ants. They were for almost an entire year the first colony to scavenge every offering I placed. They were also super entertaining to watch, and I'd say they weren't aggressive against other organisms, and they were often allowing them actually to get a piece of the meal next to the red ants, but with exception to other ant species. Here's a piece of tuna that I placed within the vivarium. It was first found by a red ant that quickly went back to the colony. Then a ghost ant actually came to visit, and then she brings her sister that quickly is pushed away by the red ants and her sisters. Have a look at this. There was loads of other small ant nests, such as this small ghost ant nest in this tree. Or this nest of ants that we called the Shy Union because of their timid behavior. Have a look here at how this worker quickly capitulates when confronted by the red worker ant. But enough with the ants now, because this vivarium now hosted multifarious species of other families, such as this vinegaroon. The name is based on their ability to, when attacked, discharge an offensive liquid which contains acetic acid that emits a vinegar-like smell. I have seen it regularly eat or drink from fruits that I have placed in the vivarium, but since it is very camera shy, I don't have that much tape of such utterances. And also, it was also clear now that in the corner of the vivarium, the termites were preparing their fungus garden. But the question was, where? We will come back to that later. So cool. A new green plant had also been placed in the vivarium that, to my despair, had been eaten from more and more each day. But one night I managed to find the responsible. A spectacular caterpillar. I made sure not to touch it since I have heard about itching caterpillars in Thailand. No wonder that I hadn't seen it, since it rested peacefully under the leaves at night and then decimated them during the day. As I progressively added plants and decorations, the vivarium activity increased coherently, and my night time lapses became more and more entertaining to watch. Here is some guy that I called Breakdance Millipede. Although instead of dancing, I suspect that he's trying to dig himself underground. Unfortunately, this part of the vivarium is the part of the vivarium that I keep the soil pretty compact. But he will for sure find more convenient soil in another part of the vivarium. This is why diversity of physical environment is so important. Talking about a completely different physical environment, the pond was starting to become active. This blew my mind, since I had not introduced a single water organism. I can only suspect that they either came from dormant eggs in the dirt, flew in, or were the offspring of another insect that flew into the vivarium. But yeah, this was just the start. This pond was a special one, since the water level always changed, and I controlled it by the will of the vivarium god, me. The reason why is not only that it is super cool, but also that it allows a constant change in the physical environment that, as you guys know, allows diversity. One of the principles of this vivarium. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but it is cool. Thumbs ups for this guy. And yeah, talking about a completely different physical environment again, the activity underground now started to increase as well. Not only termites, but other scavenging microorganisms shredded whatever I placed into their reach. And just after days or even hours, the only leftovers is poop and air. However you say it. And the air probably has some farts in it as well. I mean, look at that. That's obliterated from existence. Even now, in the vivarium's earliest stages, it attracted lots of animals from the outside. Here is the gecko we called Barney that actually lived in this trunk since the beginning, all up till now. He must have climbed down from somewhere, and he really must have liked this place. And that was all for 2017. Half a year old, and this vivarium is already very entertaining. But what surprises might await for 2018? Let's have a look. Two things to start with. The vivarium was now a bit remade, since I had added some rocks and moss that required water constantly. But during the winter vacation, my vivarium had been left uncared for 2 weeks. And not only the moss, but the lake had dried up. Almost. There was still some moisture in the sand, which was exactly what I had anticipated. This allowed for my marine boys to survive, but also maybe allow other interesting new things to happen. But unfortunately, the only slightly remarkable thing was the red ants consuming a dead cricket on the bottom of the lake. This was where the epic channel meme was made, as I consciously made the water level rise around them, and the legendary Jesus ant was born. One other thing was that there was loads of worms appearing now in the water, something that did not happen before. The soil was as always moist, even during water shortages. And then we introduced our beloved silver weaver ant colony. They immediately foraged the vivarium and then proceeded by making a beautiful arboreal nest. More about their introduction in the video above. It's absolutely amazing. I never thought they would do it, and just wow. and it all went well, and they offered us an epic nuptial flight, and instead of panicking around the nest during it, the lone queens and princes went out during a honey offering to feed and then carelessly flew out into the Bangkok night. And one even came back and shedded her wings. I caught her and later introduced her back to the colony as an additional queen. But then, after months of really owning this vivarium, a bunch of the colony vanished. Trying to figure out why, I removed their nest, trying to revive them in a separated container. The reason for their decline was not clear, but I suspected this was the making of a cruel ant species that recently had immigrated into the tank. The Argentine ants. I had noticed their tunnels next to the termite ones, but I gave them no more attention than that. I was almost certain that it was them somehow because I had observed the weavers peacefully eat next to almost all other ant species in the tank, except the Argentine ants. Just have a look at them eating next to the red big-headed ants. But here you can see the Argentines and the shy union eating from an egg, and the Argentine ant snaps the worker ant from the shy union. These guys were for sure aggressive, but they still were no match for the red ant colony or the termites that would crush them in any wars that they could come into making. Knowing this, we let them be and decided after a poll on the channel to observe them instead of exterminating them, even though we missed our silver weaver ant colony deeply. And the decision did prove itself to be worth it. The most impressive thing they did was to build, if you can call them arboreal sandcastles maybe, that they used to protect their aphids that they probably tended for their sweet liquid that can be extracted from the aphids. At this moment, all the flora in the vivarium grew now at bamboo speed. And I was obliged to cut them down to see anything else than plants inside on a regular basis. The termites had now decided to attack the big trunk of the vivarium by actually making it their home, and they often ambitiously made some small skyscrapers along the way. It was very cool to see this. They even made some arboreal tunnels against the glass wall. And each night they came out in herds from their tunnel to expand their complex of tunnels even further, step by step, in order to gain territory, I guess. Although sometimes it went out of hand. Not in vain though, each month I was presented with a new structure, just like a monthly art exhibit with the termites as artists. They filled some functions as well, such as a flight-off point for near small colonies to have their nuptial flight off. All tunnels were not entirely controlled by the termites either. Some small ant colonies managed to actually make them their nest space. Including the shy union that exited the tunnels in masses when I watered them. I even saw one of the queens at times. Can you see her? Although no ant dared to venture into the termite-controlled tunnels, for sure. Hello there, buddy. You okay? Oh, come on. Meanwhile, underground, the red ants began to participate as well, here on an industrial scale, devouring a piece of ham, even though it took a disgusting turn later on. The reason the ham rotted, though, was that this vivarium was in a shortage of scavenging muscle power, and I decided that it was time to introduce a bigger ant species, welcoming the new stars of the vivarium, the dinosaur ants. As they moved into a trunk below their container, I couldn't help but record the hunting hammerhead slug nearby. This guy tracks and eats worms and snails. A really helpful hunter in this moist environment, not to mention its peculiar beauty. At the same time, the dinosaur ants kept constructing their future stronghold that was situated in a really strategic place of the vivarium that was far away from most other threatening organisms. But they made some other satellite nests as well. One was just under the ex-weaver ant nest. And another one was strategically placed just next to the Oasis, a place where I place all my external offerings, or most of them, so to speak. Which paid off since they could just not stop eating there. So, okay, well, don't mind the invasive flies, and let's just ignore them following this dino ant that is showing us the payoffs of a satellite nest, close to where most of the food is. They also had a peculiar way of bathing themselves in honey in order to transport it back to the colony. I suspected that since they are such primitive ants, they lacked a social stomach to store the sweet secretion. They were awesome and really made this vivarium theirs. But they were wise rulers as well, as they did not vandalize or kill other animals, only eating what I gave into the vivarium as offerings, which is quite awesome if you ask me. Here is a good exemplar where the dinosaur ant just doesn't mind the termite at all. I don't know if this is their behavioral biology though. Might be something they learned in captivity. Moving on, the so-called Oasis where I placed my offerings now became twice as entertaining to watch, as these ants ate in peace with many other organisms. Even the termites were now joining the party even more often. But this was of course not without consequences. Rest in peace, termite number 3465. The vivarium soon turned into one big family where everybody knew each other's and minded their own business, surviving within. This was truly what I had aimed for, a super biodiverse vivarium in balance where all organisms have a place to live. During these times, we observed many stories taking place, like this one of this mango, that today is a full-grown tree in my neighbor's garden. The reason for its super fast growth was due to the insane bioactivity that is prospering just next to it. Nutrient-rich offerings like this chicken gets decimated down into the soil in days. Carnivorous termites. Never heard of this. This place would consume anything except one thing. Strawberries. Wait, this big slug is gonna eat it. Oh, never mind, it preferred the paper. Oh, lol. This half slug, half snail beast was a loner for almost a year in the tank. I saw him on average once every 2 weeks, munching on apples, mango, chicken, carrot, cucumber, and yeah, then there was the paper. But then out of nowhere, it asexually reproduced. Since a small version of it appeared not so long ago. It's truly awesome how we just managed to create life like this. And the closely related snail friends are maybe the greatest contributors to the rate of rapidity the food is being broken down in the vivarium. Just check these time lapses out. But this basically resulted in the vivarium looking like this after me being away for not more than 2 weeks. The cool thing though was that at each time I cut back the vegetation, I saw interesting things. Such as these abandoned arboreal termite tunnels. Having this vivarium, I really acted out as nature, like cutting back vegetation, also known as a deer coming to eat, leaves, or adding water, also known as rain. And this stimulates change, and often for the best. As when I added water to the vivarium, I probably flooded some of the dinosaur ants' tunnels, as you can see them bringing up brood from the surface. But this triggered probably one of the most awesome things that had ever happened in this vivarium. They moved. Let's follow their trail. It leads to the bonsai cliff. Yes, they decided to move up this majestic cliff. Oh, and by the way, the hammerhead worm here asexually reproduced by dividing itself into 2 parts that later will become 2 separated organisms. But anyway, they moved into the cliff, and I thought this must have been one of the coolest ant nests in a vivarium ever. To celebrate this event, they even sent out males during a dinosaur ant nuptial flight. Epic. Some had a hard time though. I could now notice also that the Argentine ants were increasing in numbers. Here you can see them with a snail and a dinosaur ant consuming a piece of sausage. And this, I remember, was the day before I made a huge mistake. This could be the biggest fail that I ever made on this channel, which was introducing a colony of freaking army ants. We had all on this channel in a poll agreed to introduce these guys in order to control the ever-increasing termite and Argentine ant colony. They aggressively foraged their surrounding, and soon these ants had covered every corner of the vivarium. The dinosaur ants carefully observed the intruders from far, and I feared the worst. These guys are far more aggressive than I had previously thought. They even began to consume my olive oil barrier. How is this going to end? That's when I saw it. They had decided just one day before the introduction to remove their queen's legs. 3 of them. Why? I soon realized that this might be because of the move, that I hadn't handled them as carefully as required for them to be successfully introduced. The poor queen fought her way forward with the help of only a few of her sisters. She really had some fire in her. In a miraculous way, she managed to get into the apparently first temporary nest, never to be seen again. And the army ants all died out within a week, whilst the rest of the vivarium peacefully continued to eat as usual. These guys made a devil's circle and all walked themselves to death. I was truly sorry for this, although I couldn't help but feel a bit relieved, since who knows what would have happened if these warriors established a colony within these walls. Nevertheless, I truly thought they could be a force for good, and it has always been a dream of mine to keep them. But I guess that's for another time. After the failed army ant introduction, I realized that this ecosystem still was fragile, and that I should be more careful. Maybe the ants' space was filled, and no more could be introduced. But I still wasn't satisfied with the biodiversity inside. I carefully observed and thought that maybe different animals that I saw fit to be introduced should be given a go. Not a colony of ants, but a colony of flatbugs was introduced. These guys were discreet and only minded their own business between these planks. Some dared to forage outside though. Next I found the water and its surrounding to be untouched for most of the time, so I decided to introduce a freshwater crab. The water was at this moment very muddy, but super bioactive. And this crab would have no problem in feeding itself around the pond as long as it was moist enough. As predicted, Mr. Crab soon made a tunnel complex around the pond,
he also made a backdoor tunnel to escape predators. Wait, Mr. Crab, please don't kill me! I didn't mean to tell them, no!
This was now his territory, and I actually caught him working, which might be one of my coolest vivarium time lapses yet. You can see the snails having a highway in the background, and also the insane activity in the pond. You can just see it moving. And as well Mr. Crab working in the bottom right corner. And now I finally felt that this vivarium was up to speed with what biodiversity really meant. The geography was not bad either, with trunks, twigs, rocks, mosses, trees, mounds and caves, leaf litters, a compost, and of course the pond. There were so many diverse organisms inside that I couldn't possibly record them all. But here are some extras. Even though I was satisfied, believe it or not, I dared to add 2 additional things. First, a frog. Still thriving to this day, this guy eats fruit flies on a daily basis, which I am certainly not complaining about. Quite often actually at night the frog ventures out to hunt, but sometimes even the snails get the best out of him. Go get him, snail. Talking about snails, these guys have a weekly orgy. I don't know, maybe it's scheduled, maybe it's not. But yeah, the orgy is out in the open where they publicly have mating rituals. Horning each other like bulls and then pushing out some insanely big white protruding thing from their head. Sometimes more than 2 at the same time. I finally introduced a Myrmicodia plant that hosted a colony of ants. Check out the video above if you want to see more. Explained in a simplistic way, it's a plant with ant tunnels in it. It's super cool. And that's it. This is the 2-year overview of this vivarium. It pained me not to really include everything in this small documentary, such as the tarantula or the countless queens that had flown inside trying to start a colony. But hey, this took some hours to make anyway, so you're welcome. Or what can I say, but you're welcome. Big announcement and news is in the next video though, for you guys that want to see a new vivarium arise. So be sure to subscribe if so, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Also remember to love all of nature, and if you can, make something like this. That will be a safe haven for all the micro wildlife in your neighborhood.